The latest rounds of U.S. sanctions ordered last week against Russia is drawing criticism from home and abroad. The sanctions in response to the Skripal poisoning have not only angered Russia's foreign ministry, but some in the U.S. media and Capitol Hill as well. They say the decision has proven useless and will only further undermine relations between the two countries. Yulia Shapovalova reports.
Washington showed an obvious disregard for international law, imposing new sanctions against Russia due to the so-called Skripal case that was stated at the Russian Foreign Ministry. The poisoning in Salisbury is a topic London's pushed hard, but never backed up by any evidence. The Foreign Ministry said the authority of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons was also questionable.
Washington is questioning the complete elimination of the Russian arsenal of chemical weapons. They prefer to ignore the fact that the Russian program for the destruction of the chemical weapons, completed last year, was implemented under strict international control in full compliance with the Convention on the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons. This looks particularly hypocritical, considering that the US itself is not rushing to destroy its arsenal of chemical weapons and remains the only member state of the Chemical Weapons Convention with a significant stockpile of chemical warfare agents.
The Russian establishment is convinced the entire history of the so-called anti-Russian sanctions fits in with the logic of Russophobia, in which political processes within the United States are actively developing today. And the Russophobia is almost the main theme of the midterm election campaign, which is now in full swing in the US. Meanwhile, media outlets in the US have questioned the usefulness of the anti-Russian sanctions. Bloomberg writes that the Russian sanctions won't work if Trump doesn't back them up.
The Trump administration has found many ways to stand up to Russia. It is built on Crimea-related sanctions begun by the Barack Obama administration, approved the sale of so-called lethal defensive weapons to Ukraine, struck Syrian military sites after Syrian President Bashar al-Assad used chemical weapons, and expelled scores of Russian diplomats from the US, also in response to the spy poisoning. The Justice Department recently indicted 13 Russians for cyber hacking. The administration also opposes the Nord Stream 2 pipeline that would carry gas directly from Russia to Germany.
USA Today writes these sanctions are not seriously affecting the Russian economy. Instead, they have encouraged Russia to develop more of its domestic industry and diversify away from oil and gas. And there are plenty of citizens who happily buy Russian. Also, a member of the US Congress, Thomas Massie, called for an end to hysteria around Russia and military rhetoric. The politician wrote about that in a column for the Real Clear Politics. The congressman noted that the obsession with Russia undermines American values and prevents the creation of productive relations between the two countries.
Hardworking Americans, including constituents in my Kentucky district, care about jobs, paying the bills, putting food on the table, and leaving this country a better place for their children. The alleged vast Russian conspiracy, harped upon by the Democrats and media since the election of President Trump, is simply not a concern of normal Americans.
So it looks like as soon as Trump tries to establish relations with Russia, for example during his last meeting with Putin in Helsinki, his opponents in America immediately counterattack. They impose new sanctions, otherwise they say if Trump doesn't introduce new sanctions, it means that he's a Russian spy. And it turns out the more he wants to improve the bilateral relations, the worse it turns out for those relations because of American domestic policy. Yulia Shapovalova, RT.
Hey YouTube, thanks for checking out our channel. We hope you enjoyed the video. We have tons of content for you just like this. For more of RT America's one-of-a-kind news and analysis, be sure to subscribe and never stop questioning more.